including, of course, allegations about his wife's non-dom status and that he was in possession of a green card. Let's talk more about this with Joe Twyman. He's the co-founder of Delta Poll and joins us down the line. Joe, good afternoon to you. Again, just giving a sense of an historical sense there. Christian was saying that chancellors have been through a hell of a lot worse than this. But there is a momentum to this story and within the Conservative Party, concern or suggestions that Sunak might just go, you know what, I don't need this, I'm going to walk.
Yes, friends of the Chancellor say that he may decide he doesn't want to be an MP anymore and prefers to live in Southern California. Remains to be seen if that's actually the case or simply an interesting threat. I think there's a really interesting question to be asked, though, about whether the Chancellor is, as you say, toast, and in what sense may he be regarded as that. You could talk about whether his position as Chancellor of the Exchequer is under threat. I think that's probably unlikely, given the circumstances around the cost of living crisis and the absence of any obvious alternative to replace him, and his position around the pandemic and furlough and everything else from that, and the benefits that were gained from that. But there is a question about whether he is as popular as he once was, and the answer to that is most definitely not. But that should not be a surprise to anyone, least of all to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. 2 years ago, during the height of the pandemic, the Chancellor was enjoying more than 2/3 of people saying that he was doing a good job. But all most people knew about him at that stage was that he was handing out money as part of furlough, as part of Eat Out to Help Out and various other initiatives, but wasn't actually known for anything beyond that. It was inevitable that once the pandemic started to come to an end, once we transitioned back to normal times, there was going to be pain down the track, and that he would be at least to some degree held responsible for that. When you then throw in the issues around his own personal wealth and that of his family and his wife, it paints a very difficult picture for Rishi Sunak, and so it's no surprise to me at all that he's suffering in the polls as a result of that.
You talked about, obviously, the kind of difficulties chancellors have been through in the past. I mean, it's not the first time that budgets haven't gone terribly well. I mean, we remember things like Pastygate and the caravan tax and all that sort of stuff with George Osborne, and that was only George Osborne or Gordon Brown's reversal on tax changes to income tax. But it is quite difficult, isn't it, for prime ministers to move chancellors, even if the relationship isn't great, because they can become very awkward customers, either as demoted cabinet ministers or indeed on the backbenches.
Yes, and you just have to look to further back to how Geoffrey Howe, former Chancellor, was so damaging to Margaret Thatcher. How Norman Lamont's resignation after Black Wednesday was damaging to John Major, even if he didn't go as quickly as people might have expected him to. And so, yes, it's difficult to move chancellors, and what I think we've seen over the last few weeks is a shift in the power base in Whitehall, a move from the Chancellor back to Downing Street. Prior to that, Downing Street was very much weakened, and the Prime Minister very much weakened as a result of Partygate. But as the cost of living crisis started to bite, we saw from really February onwards a decline in the Chancellor's fortunes that was then accelerated by the spring statements and the recent revelations. And so power has moved back, at least to some degree, to Boris Johnson. He's managed to reclaim some of that. The question is whether he will be able to now hold on to it and make the most of it. Whether Rishi Sunak will find that his wings are clipped, and what the implications are for other departments. Would people in ministers and others in other departments who previously were wary of going up against someone so popular, will they now perhaps push back against some of the cuts to their own departments that are coming in?
Joe,